Long before the first flame ever flickered in human hands, there was only darkness and the raw taste of survival. Imagine a figure crouched in the shadow of an acacia tree, somewhere on the ancient African savanna, 2 million years before anything we would recognize as civilization. The sun has dropped below the horizon, and the temperature is falling fast. This creature, not quite human but no longer entirely ape, clutches something wet and heavy against its chest. It is a section of intestine pulled from the carcass of a gazelle that a lion pride abandoned just hours ago. The meat is cold. It smells of iron and grass and the faint sourness of early decay. There is no fire to cook it, no blade to cut it cleanly, no salt, no preparation, no ceremony. There is only hunger and the desperate need to survive another night. This is how your ancestors ate for over 1 million years. This is the forgotten world before cooking, when every meal was a negotiation with death. We rarely think about it now. Food arrives wrapped in plastic, heated in seconds, seasoned to perfection. But for the vast majority of human evolutionary history, eating was nothing like this. It was brutal, it was dangerous, and it shaped everything about who we became. The story of how humans ate without cooking is not simply a tale of primitive struggle. It is the story of adaptation, of biological transformation, of a species learning to extract life from a hostile world, using nothing but bare hands and desperate ingenuity. To understand this world, you must first abandon every modern assumption about food. There were no kitchens, no storage, no agriculture, no domesticated animals. The landscape provided what it provided, and survival meant learning to consume whatever that landscape offered, regardless of how unpalatable it might seem to us now. Early hominins were opportunistic omnivores in the truest sense. They ate what they could find, what they could catch, what other predators left behind, and the majority of what they consumed was never touched by heat. Raw plant matter formed the foundation of the ancient diet. Tubers pulled from the earth, fibrous and starchy, requiring immense chewing to break down. Leaves stripped from low branches, bitter with alkaloids and tannins. Fruits when the seasons allowed, sweet but fleeting, often contested by birds and insects and competing primate species. Nuts and seeds cracked between stones, the hard shells yielding to persistence and force. These foods were available, but they were difficult. The human gut, even then, was not designed for pure herbivory. Unlike gorillas or chimpanzees, early humans lacked the massive intestines needed to ferment large quantities of raw plant fiber efficiently. Every calorie extracted from vegetation came at a cost measured in time spent chewing, in energy devoted to digestion, in the constant search for enough volume to meet metabolic needs. But plants alone were never enough. The human brain, already growing larger than those of other primates, demanded dense caloric fuel. Fat and protein became essential currencies in the economy of survival. And so early humans turned to meat, not as hunters initially, but as scavengers. The African savanna was a theater of predation, lions and hyenas and wild dogs bringing down prey in violent spectacle. But predators rarely consume everything. They take the muscle, the organs they prefer, and they leave behind what they consider waste. To early hominins, that waste was treasure. Marrow-rich bones abandoned in the grass, skulls with brains still intact inside, scraps of flesh clinging to rib cages. This is where stone tools enter the story. Simple flakes of rock, sharp enough to cut through hide, to scrape meat from bone, to crack open femurs, and access the fatty marrow within. Picture the scene. A small group approaches a carcass under the midday sun, moving quickly, eyes scanning the horizon for returning predators. They work in near silence, using stones to hack away portions of meat, stuffing pieces into their mouths even as they cut. There is no time for selectivity. Flies are already gathering. The smell of blood carries far across the open plain. They eat what they can, as fast as they can, then retreat to safer ground with whatever they manage to carry away. This is not dining. This is survival at its most elemental. Raw meat consumption posed challenges that cooking would later solve. Muscle fiber, without heat to denature its proteins, is tough and chewy. It requires significant jaw strength and prolonged mastication. The earliest hominins possessed robust jaws and large molars precisely for this reason. Dental architecture adapted to a world without fire. But meat also carried risks: parasites, bacteria, pathogens that could sicken or kill. The human immune system evolved in response, developing tolerances and defenses against the microbial threats present in uncooked animal flesh. Stomach acid became highly acidic, comparable to that of dedicated scavengers like vultures, capable of neutralizing many dangerous organisms before they could cause harm. Yet the most prized parts of any carcass were not the muscles that modern humans associate with meat. They were the organs: liver, dense with vitamins and iron; kidneys, heart, brain, incredibly rich in fats, essential for neural development. These soft tissues required less chewing than muscle and delivered far more nutritional value per bite. Bone marrow, accessed by cracking long bones with stones, provided a concentrated source of fat and calories that could mean the difference between survival and starvation. Early humans likely consumed parts of animals that would revolt modern sensibilities: intestines still containing partially digested plant matter, blood drunk fresh from wounds, cartilage gnawed from joints. Nothing was wasted because nothing could be wasted. Every edible component of a carcass represented precious energy in a world where the next meal was never guaranteed. Insects offered another crucial protein source, one that remains underappreciated in modern reconstructions of ancient diet. Termites pulled from mounds, grubs extracted from rotting wood, grasshoppers and beetles gathered from vegetation. These small creatures were abundant, relatively easy to collect, and packed with protein and fat. In many parts of the world, insects still form a dietary staple, a living reminder of practices that stretch back millions of years. For early hominins without fire, insects required no preparation. They could be eaten immediately upon capture, their exoskeletons cracking between teeth, their bodies releasing small bursts of nutrition that accumulated into meaningful caloric intake over the course of a day. Coastal and lakeside environments offered different opportunities. Shellfish could be pried from rocks and consumed raw, their flesh salty and rich with minerals. Fish trapped in tidal pools or shallow waters could be caught by hand and eaten fresh. Seabirds and their eggs were taken when accessible. These aquatic resources may have played a significant role in human brain evolution, providing omega fatty acids crucial for neural development. Some researchers believe that access to coastal food sources helped drive the cognitive expansion that eventually distinguished humans from other primates. The ocean's edge became a buffet of raw possibilities, and groups that learned to exploit it gained meaningful survival advantages. But coastal plenty was seasonal and localized. For populations living inland, across the savannas and forests of prehistoric Earth, survival meant adapting to radical variation in food availability. Wet seasons brought abundance, fruits ripening on branches, animals giving birth to vulnerable young, vegetation lush and accessible. Dry seasons brought scarcity, waterholes shrinking, animals migrating, the landscape turning brown and hostile. Humans survived these cycles through behavioral flexibility, following game when necessary, exploiting different food sources as they became available, enduring periods of hunger when nothing else remained. Starvation was not abstract in this world. It was a constant companion, a pressure that shaped every decision about where to travel, when to rest, how much energy to expend in search of calories. The human body evolved remarkable mechanisms for coping with food scarcity. Fat storage allowed surplus calories to be banked against future shortage. Metabolic rates could slow during lean times, conserving energy. Ketosis, the metabolic state in which the body burns fat for fuel in the absence of carbohydrates, became a survival adaptation rather than a diet trend. These biological mechanisms reflect the reality of a world where meals came irregularly and often insufficiently. Preservation without cooking was nearly impossible. Meat spoiled within days, sometimes hours, depending on temperature and conditions. Plant foods wilted, rotted, or were consumed by insects. There was no refrigeration, no curing, no canning. Food was immediate. You found it, you consumed it, or you lost it. This immediacy shaped social behavior as well. Sharing became essential because hoarding was impractical. A successful scavenging expedition that yielded more meat than a single individual could consume before spoilage created an opportunity for reciprocity. I share with you today, and when I am hungry tomorrow, you share with me. These patterns of food sharing may have laid the groundwork for the complex social structures that would eventually define human civilization. The landscape itself dictated what was possible. Dense forests offered fruits and nuts and arboreal prey but made hunting large game difficult. Open savannas exposed early humans to predators but provided access to the kills those predators made. Seasonal migration followed food availability, tracking herds, returning to known fruiting trees, seeking out water sources during dry periods. This nomadic existence left little room for the elderly, the injured, the very young. Survival was precarious for everyone, but especially for those who could not keep pace with the group's movement. Teeth tell the story of this dietary reality. Fossil evidence reveals the heavy wear patterns of early hominins, enamel ground down by years of chewing tough raw foods. Molars were large and flat, designed for crushing and grinding rather than the refined cutting we associate with modern human dentition. Jaw muscles were powerful, and the skull architecture that supported them was robust. As cooking eventually emerged and softened food, these features began to diminish. Jaws shrank, teeth became smaller. The human face literally transformed in response to changes in how food was prepared. The gut underwent parallel transformations. Raw plant consumption requires extensive fermentation to extract nutrients from cellulose. Herbivorous primates have long intestinal tracts to accommodate this process. Early humans, increasingly reliant on animal fat and protein, experienced gut reduction over evolutionary time. Smaller intestines required less metabolic energy to maintain, freeing resources that could be directed toward brain development. This trade-off, smaller gut for larger brain, is sometimes called the expensive tissue hypothesis. It suggests that the shift toward calorie-dense foods, and eventually toward cooking, literally powered the cognitive expansion that defines our species. Fire changed everything. When humans first began using flame is debated, with evidence suggesting controlled fire use emerged somewhere between 1 million and 400,000 years ago, depending on interpretation. But the consequences of cooking are beyond dispute. Heat breaks down collagen in meat, making it softer and easier to chew. It gelatinizes starches in tubers, increasing their digestibility. It kills parasites and bacteria, making previously dangerous foods safe. It liberates calories that would otherwise pass through the body unabsorbed. Cooking effectively externalized part of the digestive process, allowing humans to extract more energy from the same quantity of food with less biological effort. With cooking came profound changes in behavior and biology. Mealtimes became social events organized around fire. Food could be shared more easily when everyone gathered in the same location. The softening of food reduced the need for powerful chewing, contributing to the facial and dental changes already underway. More remarkably, cooking freed time previously devoted to foraging and eating. Chimpanzees spend up to 6 hours daily chewing their food. Early humans likely spent comparable time. With cooking, that requirement dropped dramatically, liberating hours that could be devoted to tool-making, social bonding, language development, and the complex cultural activities that would eventually distinguish humanity from all other species. But we should not romanticize the transition or imagine it was swift. For countless generations, humans lived in the twilight zone between raw consumption and cooked cuisine. Fire was not always available. Skills varied between groups. Bad weather or migration into unfamiliar territory meant reverting to older patterns. The capability for raw consumption remained essential even as cooking became more common, a backup system encoded in human biology against the possibility that fire might fail. This legacy persists within us. The human digestive system retains the ability to process raw meat and raw plant matter, though we rarely exercise it. Our taste preferences evolved in response to the nutritional needs of a pre-cooking world. Cravings for fat and sweetness that once directed us towards survival essential foods, but now contribute to modern health problems in environments of caloric abundance. The bacteria in our intestines, our microbiome, carries echoes of ancestral dietary patterns, adapted to foods we no longer eat and struggling with foods we consume in excess. Stand in a modern supermarket, surrounded by 10,000 products packaged for convenience, and try to imagine what eating once meant. Not the casual act of opening a refrigerator, but the desperate search across miles of hostile terrain for something, anything, that might provide enough energy to survive another day. Not the pleasure of a well-seasoned meal, but the grim determination required to chew through raw muscle fiber or crack bones for their marrow. Not the social warmth of dinner with family, but the silent urgency of consuming a scavenged carcass before predators return to claim it. This was reality for your ancestors across a span of time so vast it dwarfs all recorded history into insignificance. We have forgotten. We have had to forget. The brutality of that existence is incompatible with modern consciousness, too harsh to hold in mind while going about ordinary life. But the forgetting comes at a cost. It disconnects us from the profound achievement that cooking represents, from the millions of years of suffering and adaptation that preceded it, from the biological inheritance we carry in every cell. The next time you eat, whatever you eat, however it was prepared, remember this. You are the heir to an unbroken chain of survival stretching back through ice ages and savannas and ancient forests. Your ancestors ate without fire. They ate without tools, without knowledge, without any certainty of tomorrow. And against all odds, they survived long enough to pass their genes to you. Every meal is a memorial to their struggle, whether we recognize it or not.